This is just a geometry introduction for grade 9 math. Okay, so some concepts you might have learned in grade 7 and 8 are things like complementary angles. Complementary angles are angles that add up to 90 degrees. So if you have a right angle, like something like this, we sometimes call that a right angle. That indicates 90 degrees. So if we took that and we split it and we said this side was 20 degrees, now we know that this side would be 70 degrees. So these are called complementary angles, and they add to 90 degrees. You've probably recently seen them in our right angle triangles. Right there, that's a 90-degree angle. Okay, another one is called supplementary angles. So supplementary angles are angles that add to 180 degrees. So if you had a straight line has 180 degrees on it. That's how many degrees a straight line would be. So let's say we took our straight line and we split it into two sections. And we said this was 60 degrees. How much would this part of our straight line be? It would be 120 degrees. So you see that they both would add up to 180. So these are called supplementary angles, and they add to 180. And so that's complementary and supplementary. Those are two concepts you probably learned in grade 7 and 8. This is a little introduction. Oh, another thing you might have learned is something called opposite angles. So something we know about opposite angles, if you have two lines, the angles across from each other will be equal. So if this angle right here was 100 degrees, this one, then the angle right across from it would also be 100 degrees. And we could even figure out the other two angles because we know this is a straight line right here. And we know straight lines add up to 180 degrees. They're called supplementary angles. So we know this angle here has to be 180 degrees. So this one would have to be 80 because 100 plus 80 would be 180. And then we know opposite angles are the same, which means this would be 80 degrees. So those are three basic geometry concepts that you may have already learned. Okay, I'm going to share one more with you. And these have to do with parallel lines. So if you have two parallel lines, we indicate that they're parallel by putting a little arrow. Now we know those two lines are parallel. They will never touch each other. They'll never cross. Now I'm going to stick what's called a transversal right through my parallel lines. So I don't know why, but we call this thing a transversal. And these are two parallel lines. Turns out we can find the angles in these things. So if we know one. So let's say I tell you that this angle is 110 degrees right here. You could actually figure out the other 7 angles. So these 3 and then these 4, you could actually figure them all out by knowing a few concepts. Let's get rid of my little pictures there. Okay, so we know that straight lines add up to 180, right? Here's a straight line. So 180 minus 110 would be 70, so we know that's 70 degrees. We also just learned about opposite angles. So now we know that the angles opposite each other are the same. So this would be 70 because they're opposite. And this would be 110 because they're opposite. So we can figure out all 4 of those angles. And then there's a few more terms that I'm going to quickly go through. One is called corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are angles that are the same when you have 2 sets of parallel lines. So if this angle right here is 70, the corresponding angle to 70 would be this angle right here. We call those corresponding angles. They also kind of make an F pattern. See how you could kind of draw an upside down backwards F? So it kind of makes an F pattern. Okay. Another set of corresponding angles could be this side, 110. And this is also 110 down here. So those are called corresponding angles. Okay, another set of another term is called alternate angles. And they kind of make a Z pattern. This is a little bit redundant, but alternate angles are, so if you're to draw a Z like this, then it tells us that these angles are equal, the 270s. It also tells us that the 110 and the 110 would be equal. So those are called alternate angles. And finally, another one is called co-interior angles. Co-interior angles make a C pattern, and co-interior angles add to 180. Co-interior angles are the angles that are inside your parallel lines. So see how I can draw a C? And now I know that these 2 angles, 110 and 70, have to add to 180. And they do. And we can just repeat our same pattern. So 110, so this would be 110 because opposite angles, and this would be 70 because opposite angles. So that's how you can find all the missing angles in a set of parallel lines.